to have the opportunity to interview a very distinguished individual, Mr. T.P. Sreenivasan. He is the former permanent representative of India to the United Nations and the former Indian ambassador to Austria and Slovenia. And he's currently the head of the Council for Higher Education in the state of Kerala. Mr. Sreenivasan's extensive diplomatic experience brings a wealth of insights to our discussion on the complexities of the Security Council and India's quest to attain permanent membership. Sir, thank you again for accepting this interview at such a short notice and for agreeing to help me with this project.
Thank you, Nikhil. This is my favorite subject because it was in 1979 when I went to New York into the United Nations. Mm-hmm. And that's the same year we proposed an expansion of the Security Council, 1979. Mm. Till now it is 2024, nothing has happened. Mm. So lots of theories, etc., discussions, committees, conferences. I myself chaired a whole consultation group. Mm-hmm. But as of now, there is nothing to show as progress.
Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting topic, and I'm glad that you have chosen to talk to me about it.
So just to give some context, I'm working on a school project where my main task is to investigate what's stopping India from becoming a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, along with the US, UK, China, Russia, and France. And I've done some previous research on the topic. However, most of it has led to the fact that in order for another country to get in, they need to have the ratification from the P5, which is hard to get as none of the permanent five really have the need to accept another country into their elite group. So to begin with, could you share your thoughts on the current permanent members and how they're dealing with current world issues?
Well, permanent five are not the only obstacles to expansion of the permanent membership of the Security Council. We must face the fact that you need two conditions. You must have 5 permanent members supporting the proposal and 2/3 majority of the General Assembly. Mm-hmm. So the P5 you can handle 5, but how do you handle 135 countries? That's the 2/3 majority of the General Assembly. So the general feeling in the General Assembly is that we should have more permanent members. Even these permanent members should be sent home. That is the general tendency and the general desire of a vast majority of the member states. They know they cannot accomplish it, but fundamentally that is the position of many small islands, small states, and even some of the bigger states, that UN is not a democratic organization as long as P5 exists. Mm-hmm. And if only you remove the P5 or remove the veto power from them, there will be no democracy in the United Nations. And therefore, they would rather have the General Assembly taking decisions or a body of the General Assembly taking decisions than a Security Council which was established originally and which is inflexible, and it is impossible to bring any changes because they are not willing to part with their own power, and they were the winners of the Second World War. Mm-hmm. And they would like to maintain their position whatever be the situation in the world. So we are faced with two questions. One is the general sentiment in the United Nations against expansion, and also the not just hesitation but opposition of the 5 permanent members to make any changes.
So basically, it's a fundamental flaw at the very beginning of the grounding of the United Nations that the Security Council was made in the first place, as it diminishes the democratic part of an international organization. Am I correct?
Yes, but democracy is not the only thing that you need in an institution like that. Because one man, one vote may not always work. And various considerations, particularly relating to the leading countries at that time in 1945. Mm-hmm. They are the ones who are now the permanent members. Germany is not there, Japan is not there, Italy is not there, India is not there. You can count out so many. And therefore, these 5 had made sure that there will be no change in the charter without their agreement. And that was deliberately injected. And at that time, they were the most powerful countries in the world. They were the winners of the war.
Yeah.
So this was a winner's constitution. They are dictating to those who lost the war. Say, no, do you know that in the charter there is even a provision of enemy countries? Because enemy countries are not mentioned. But it says that enemy countries, if one country or one member of the UN goes and declares war against one of the enemy countries, the enemy country will not have the protection of the UN Charter. So it is a very, very drastic provision. Of course, nobody wants to identify the enemy countries, though we know who they meant, because now the new power base has changed completely.
Yeah.
But because of that flaw in the original decision, nobody can change anything without their agreement. So they have to decide. And then the General Assembly has to decide also. But let me also say that the veto power had its own uses. And that particular situation where there was a Cold War and there was a certain balance between the Soviet Union and the United States. And US was an advantage because they had UK and France also with them. And therefore, certain balance was maintained.
With the veto.
Even speaking only about India, if there was no veto power in the Security Council, we would have been in trouble at least 3 or 4 times. Are you aware of that?
And they were saved by Russia.
Yes, several occasions. Several occasions, starting from Kashmir, then Goa, then Afghanistan. So many areas where the majority of the United Nations may have been against India's position. And therefore, in the Security Council, had it not been for the veto of the Soviet Union, we would have had to change our policies.
So it's good on one hand, and then it can be negative on the other hand, the use of veto, the entire concept.
Yes, the entire concept people are all against, but it has maintained a certain balance and did not push any particular power to go forward. Why is China itself so constrained? Because they cannot really want whatever they want to do. Even permanent members cannot do whatever they want to. You need 9 votes of the rest of the world in order to pass a resolution. So that way, even the ordinary members of the Security Council have a veto. Collectively, they have a veto. If the permanent members want to pass something, they need 4 more votes. 5 votes they can cast. But where will the other 4 votes come from? It has to come from smaller, less developed countries. So they are also not totally free. And therefore, that is why there was no kind of chaos that we would have seen elsewhere in the past. But now the world structure has changed and the power equations have changed. So we need to change the equation within the Security Council also. It is logical, but it is against the vested interests of the 5 permanent members now. And they had introduced this so-called flaw into the charter deliberately. It was not a mistake.
Yeah.
And there was also a discussion at that time whether when a permanent member happens to invade another country, can that permanent member still use his veto in its favor? You can. That is what Russia is doing now.
Yeah.
But at that time, when the charter was being discussed, there was a specific proposal to prevent a permanent member invading another country from exercising the veto. And they didn't accept that.
Yeah.
So these are all the problems that we have. But so, since your focus is on India's chances, I would say in the present circumstances, there is no chance of India getting a permanent membership with veto in the near future. But of course, over time, anything can happen. French Revolution was not brought about in a day. So many things built up over the years, and we have been building this since 1979. 1979 we only wanted non-permanent members. But after the Cold War ended, we also wanted permanent members.
Yeah.
So there are many formulae what to do.
Mm-hmm.
They say some is permanent members without veto, permanent members, no, just remove their veto, then give more countries the veto, or establish some kind of a double veto or triple veto. Not one country can exercise a veto, but they have to join up with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So all these ideas are floating around for the last 30, 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm familiar with all this because I have attended so many of these meetings and argued India's case.
Yeah.
So if you want to hear India's case, I can give you that. Is that the time for it?
Yes, please. Please go ahead.
Yes. The obvious number one thing is that even more than before, because India is the most populous country in the world,
Mm-hmm.
we have crossed China's population.
Yeah.
So population-wise, a major country with it's not just a country but an old civilization.
Mm-hmm.
To be out of permanent membership of the Security Council is criminal, according to us.
Yeah.
And the present situation does not reflect the realities of the world. No, there are no Germany or Japan there. Africa is not represented.
Mm-hmm.
Latin America is not represented. So, in that situation, expansion of the permanent membership is required, and for that, India has many qualifications.
Yeah.
First and foremost, our absolute loyalty to the United Nations. We follow every resolution, except of course, something which is inimical to us or against interests, we do not. But India acts generally in the interest of the global good, not really looking for what we want from the UN. We actually want to give to the UN our experience, our solutions, share with the rest of the world. Of course, we asked for one thing, that is Kashmir. At that time when the war started, we wanted the war to be ended and Kashmir to be returned to India. But that has not worked till today.
Yeah.
Other than that, there is nothing that we have gone to the UN and say we want A, B, C, D. We may have not voted for the NPT. We may not have signed the CTBT. And these are positions we hold because of our national security situation. And other than that, whether it is climate change or Palestine issue or Namibia, apartheid, India has played a very leading role for the community, for the international community. No other country has been so loyal.
Yeah.
And then peacekeeping forces. We are the biggest, because Pakistan is a close second. India is the biggest contributor of peacekeeping troops.
Yeah.
Where whenever we are acceptable. Of course, in the old days, we are not acceptable to Israel. Therefore, many Middle East peacekeeping forces, India was not invited. But now we are acceptable to everybody. So, whenever a peacekeeping force is established, as you know, there is no permanent force. The Secretary General has to send out his hat and get contributions from whichever country is willing to come. And both the opponents in the conflict have to agree to establish our peacekeeping force, choose the peacekeepers, and even to demolish it. Even if the problem is solved, if the two countries do not agree, you cannot even demolish a peacekeeping operation. So, in that situation, India must be there to reflect the present global importance, India's own importance and its economic growth, the commitment to the UN. In all this, India is second to none. And so on the qualification, nobody disputes these qualifications. Yeah. Nobody says that India is not entitled. But they have other problems, not only among the permanent members, but also among the non-permanent members.
Thank you for the elaborate answer. My next question is, in light of the recent US veto of the truce resolution in Gaza, which really undermined the credibility of the Security Council to maintain peace and stability in a region, how important do you think it is for a country like India to be present as a permanent member there?
That's a totally hypothetical question.
Yeah.
You see, only those who are permanent members can exercise the veto. The other issue we already discussed. It's not likely to happen in the near possible future. So we can say that yes, we were there. It would have been a different picture, but that is purely hypothetical.
Okay.
And do you know how many vetoes that United States has exercised in the Security Council for Israel? Many. I don't remember the numbers.
Yeah.
And so throughout the Cold War, they protected Israel by vetoing anything and everything, and voting against anything and everything relating to Israel in the General Assembly also. So they are not shy. They have a vital interest in Israel, and they have a responsibility to protect Israel's sovereignty and also to protect it against the ambitions of the other countries.
Yeah.
So there is nothing strange about that veto. And it is only an expression of an existing situation. It is not an evolving issue, shall we say.
Geopolitically speaking, out of the current 5 members in the council, probably the main opposition would be for India would be China due to various disputes, and it is also common knowledge that both countries are engaging in an economic competition. So with China being one of the obvious nations to not ratify India's bid or to oppose it, how do the Indo-Chinese relationships impact India's quest for permanent membership?
No, China is not the only country which is opposing us. That's the wrong assumption. China, everybody knows China will veto whatever we propose for India. But there are others also not supportive fully. All their commitment to us, like United States, is purely illusory. You know, uh, when the big change happened when Obama came to India in 2010.
Yeah.
So he said in a futuristic way when he was asked whether India will be supported. He said, "Well, in the future, if the Security Council is expanded and a decision is arrived at for new permanent members, India would United States would like to see India as a permanent member.
Yeah.
How many conditions are there?" And then we immediately said, "Yes, then why don't you move for it?" Then they said, "No." Even UK refused to do that. So they are not willing to raise a little finger. If a permanent member moves a resolution or even speaks in support of India in the Security Council or General Assembly, the things will move. But we know for a fact that after this statement by the President, a secret telegram went from the President to the Secretary of State, who was Hillary Clinton, that please don't take any action on what the President has spoken in Mumbai. That was leaked, the WikiLeaks, that resolution, that telegram.
Yeah.
So they are playing a double game. So they will say, if you ask them, yes, we supported Obama, supported India, such and such a time. But it has no meaning at all unless they are able to update it. And so even Russia, which was very friendly to us, was not willing to move anything. They will always say, let there be an agreement. They are concerned about Pakistan, they are concerned about Malaysia, Australia, all who belong to our region who will object to our being present there. And Pakistan has a group, I don't know if you know about that, called Coffee Group, because they have no other name to give it. And that is, they just drink coffee in order to oppose any changes in the Security Council. And they have support of about 70 countries who do not mindset of not only the permanent members, but also of the general membership. If we go for a vote in the General Assembly today, saying that, without even mentioning the country, suppose we go for a vote saying that Security Council should be expanded with 5 permanent members and 5 non-permanent members and make it into 25, you will not pass it. The general membership will not accept it. So these are all theoretical. But you must also be aware that there is a report or there is a story taking the rounds that India was offered permanent membership of the Security Council. And the reason is that, but there is no record of any such offer, number one.
So it's
Number,
just a myth.
number 2, it is only a hearsay. And it is true that Pandit Nehru's sister, who was at the UN, wrote to her brother saying that there is such an offer. from the Soviets and the Americans. And Pandit Nehru immediately replied, please do not touch it even with a barge pole.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time also, even this proposal was there. The proposal was to give China's seat to India, not to give India a seat, because they were very keen to oust the communist China from the United Nations, because Formosa was sitting there, Taiwan was sitting there.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to oust China. And so they were offering us as a kind of incentive or a temptation to us to say that we will take it. And the Prime Minister Nehru was very clear in his mind. He said that we don't want China's seat.
Yeah.
And that should be occupied by China. And when we are ready to become a permanent member, we shall let you know. And that we have been letting them know for a long time. So this whole story that such an offer existed or it still exists is quite illusory. Nobody can find any credibility about that.
Before connecting this interview with you, I read a few of your articles, and one of them that you published in 2011 in the Foreign Affairs Journal, you quoted a Canadian representative saying, 5 vetoes already impaired the good functioning of the Council. How would adding 5 more help, and who would it help? So, and this is all hypothetically speaking, if the Council does get expanded, would the new nations get a veto, or what sort of voting rights would they get, in your opinion, if it does
So,
get
after they enter the Security Council?
Yeah.
Or out before that? At
Once...
the moment, of course, everybody has one vote in the General Assembly, right? And you need a 2/3 majority. So that is simple. Everybody has a vote, including permanent members, Security Council and others. Everybody. As a member of the General Assembly, you get a vote in any circumstance. Okay?
Yeah.
So without the General Assembly support, this cannot move forward. But who proposes it? Strictly speaking, according to the Charter, the Security Council should propose, like membership. See, Taiwan applies for a membership of the UN every year. Every year it is rejected by the Security Council because of the Chinese veto.
Yeah.
So they cannot go to the General Assembly. So they are stuck. Right? So similarly, any proposal about expansion, from wherever it comes, it will be rejected. And so where is the need for any vote?
So, if, for example, if India places a bid to be in the Security Council, you're not confident that 2/3 majority will be in favor?
I'm not at all sure. In fact, I'm sure that there will be no 2/3 majority vote for India or for any other country. Because the majority of the members of the General Assembly pass a resolution every year asking for the veto to be abolished. But since it is a General Assembly resolution, it cannot be implemented.
Yeah.
So, but the mood is very clear. They don't want more permanent members. And they believe that even new people, when they become permanent members, they will behave like the old permanent members. They will vote in their own interests and not in the interest of the majority of the members of the United Nations.
Do you think this is even worth trying for anymore, to try and be a permanent member of the Security Council, in India's viewpoint, if it's pretty clear that it's not a practical reality in the coming future?
No, but that is where we have to remember the French Revolution or the Soviet Revolution. You know, they have taken years to build up. And nobody expected it to happen, but it happened. So many of our leaders, to whom I have talked about this, they all say that we have to maintain the pressure. At one time, when I was ambassador in Austria, I took the position with the government that we should stop, complaining about it and shouting about it. Let them come to us. Let's sit back. No other permanent member can be appointed without India. That's not going to happen. But then I was told very firmly, no, if you sit back, anything may happen. So we have to assert, insist. And since we have now a new assertive foreign policy from Modi, it is even more necessary because the Prime Minister keeps talking about how can we wait, things like that he speaks in the General Assembly. How long can we wait? Oh, this is our right. All these things he says, which we did not say in the past. We are very polite and gentle. So this assertive policy, reform of the United Nations, is now a demand from India.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore we cannot, rest or keep quiet. We have to continue to campaign for it till kingdoms come.
Mm-hmm.
There is no other option.
Okay. My question is, in 2017, I researched and it was reported that the G4 nations were willing to temporarily forego their veto power if granted a permanent United Nations Security Council seat. Can you
Yes, for
explain?
15 years.
Yeah, exactly.
They
And
had
then.
said that for 15 years they will not claim that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that is very hypothetical. Nobody is offering you 15 years. Nobody is offering you membership, permanent membership. Nobody is offering you veto. So what do you have? You have no right to reject or accept something. There's nothing on offer. So these are all again hypothetical questions.
Mm-hmm.
These are games, diplomatic games played by countries to measure the temperature.
Mm-hmm.
So they throw out things like that, permanent membership without veto, then veto wielding members themselves deciding that only two or three should join together unless otherwise it is not a veto. These are all proposals floating around all over,
Yeah.
but nobody is picking up any of those things. So if you compare, there are several publications now with all these proposals, but nobody is enthusiastic about them because nobody thinks that's possible. The nearest that we got was when Kofi Annan published his report. You may be aware of it.
Yeah.
In which he made two plans, Plan A and Plan B.
Mm-hmm.
Plan A was to limited expansion, and Plan B was our own proposal.
Mm-hmm.
What is the use of it? Two proposals means no proposal. And that was the closest we came. And that proposal had come from the Secretary General himself.
Yeah.
After consultations from an expert group.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all very, very clear, right from 1979. We're very clear that this is not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But many things have happened in the world. Can United Nations be ignorant of it? Can they hold on to this position? The pandemic came, Security Council could not even meet because China would veto it. Russia-Ukraine war came, Security Council can do nothing because one permanent member is fighting a war.
Mm-hmm.
Now in Palestine, another permanent member is willing to veto anything for the sake of Israel. So where is the hope? Where is the expectation?
But with all of these events with permanent members vetoing for their national interest, isn't the Security Council or even the UN as a whole losing its credibility?
Yes, there is no credibility at all.
Yeah.
It's rock bottom. The time when the pandemic came and they could not hold a meeting
Mm-hmm.
for international cooperation to fight the thing because there is a permanent member attacking, vetoing that also.
Mm-hmm.
Then where is the hope?
Yeah.
So everybody will say that's a very peculiar situation. Now we have to, veto should be withdrawn and held back.
Mm-hmm.
There was only one occasion when the UN fought a war in Iraq. And that only once. The second war was fought by Americans.
Yeah.
But the UN actually fought a war with Iraq and succeeded in liberating Kuwait. Nobody expected that.
Mm.
And since then, there have been many crises. But each occasion, there was a veto one way or the other.
So through the charter, it's adding more nations would be very complicated, and it's a very distant dream. So, and with the UN itself as an organization losing its credibility, is there any way for the United Nations as an organization to make amends to the charter, for example, to allow the removal of a veto, for example, or addition of more countries into the Security Council?
No, that is absolutely no. There's no such chance. But I myself had a proposal. I put it forward
Mm-hmm.
that that G20 should be converted as a Security Council.
Mm-hmm.
Why I say this? Because G20 is better represented. Many regions are not represented in the General Security Council.
Mm-hmm.
So with the G20's composition and no veto in G20,
Mm-hmm.
if Security Council's responsibility, at least the debating part of it, is given to the G20, then there could be an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And we demonstrated it in Delhi during G20 when there was no agreement before.
Mm-hmm.
Because in Indonesia also there was some vague agreement, but after Indonesia, Russian position changed even further. And at the ministerial level and others, we tried to have some kind of a compromise. And we could not do that. And everybody was walking out on everybody. But finally, Mr. Modi persisted and insisted, and he went to one leader after another, trying to find some language which would be acceptable to all, and we managed to get it. Not that it changed anything in the world. They did not have even a ceasefire.
Yeah.
But we very proudly say that we were able to reach an agreement between them because India has been supportive of negotiations right from the beginning. Even though we did not criticize Russia or condemn Russia because of our bilateral relations, but we told Russia very frontally that this is not the solution for the world's crises. And therefore, we had some credibility. And the Russians also did not think that we were against them. So there was some hope there. And therefore, we were able to reach an agreement in G20 in Delhi. So why not try that? Why not ask G20 to deal with the security issues? Of course, everybody will tell you. You ask anybody else, they'll say this is foolish. Nobody is going to do any such thing.
Yeah.
But I wrote in the Hindu. I don't know whether you saw that, in which I said G20 could be a dream security council.
When was that published?
In 2022 only.
Okay, alright. I'll look at that afterwards.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you very much. But you didn't ask me the ultimate question as to if nothing happens, what happens to the world? So okay. The world will carry on.
Yeah.
I'm an optimist in that respect. We meet these crises, but even with a faulty Security Council, things may move slowly towards, either towards disaster or towards some kind of an uneasy peace. And if that happens, maybe a new United Nations may have to be designed. And then there will not be any veto. A General Assembly might meet and discuss these issues to break the deadlock. But I'm not saying that this will happen. But I don't want to leave it in a hopeless situation. Yeah. Because if you look back at the history, you will see even pandemic we handled finally without any cooperation, with all the conflicts, vaccine being thrown into countries which did not need them, and the countries who needed the vaccine are not available. So it's a total chaos. Yeah. But still, we survived. At least we hope we survived. So I don't want to give up hope on this. And human ingenuity can always find ways and means to deal with the most intricate decisions. And that I'm saying as a conclusion, not to sound desperate. We may find solutions. Yeah. So, and that too, for a youngster like you, it's good to have hope. And I see that you have expressed that hope in many of your questions. Because you are thinking out of the box and trying to see solutions. That's what you will have to do when you grow up even further. And maybe life is better in your hands than in mine. Okay, so thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much.
I was struck by your seriousness and also your background knowledge. That is why I agreed to speak to you at length. Because many people ask me such questions, but they don't act with the kind of specialization you seem to have acquired and also very thoughtful ideas. And that is why I found it very interesting.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And you are an inspiration to many young people like me, delegates who wish to continue in the field of international relations in the future. Thank you very much.